My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Sammaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you are tuning in from. Today, it will be just me. So please do get in the live chat, get in the comments, also on Instagram, and throw your questions my way. Anything related to the ATP Tour, but particularly if it's related to the last 7 days or the upcoming few days with tournaments, of course, in Metz and in Athens, which will ultimately decide who makes the ATP Finals lineup. Those two players remaining in that fight are, of course, Felix Auger-Aliassime and Lorenzo Musetti. Felix Auger-Aliassime, though, will not be taking part because he has kind of surprisingly withdrawn. I guess he must be feeling something, or he's been told something in terms of Novak Djokovic's appearance or non-appearance at the ATP Finals. I think Novak is still going to play. Do let me know in the live chat whether you think that Novak is going to play. But yeah, I think he's going to play. I mean, the thing is, all the promo stuff is still being churned out, even in the last few hours. Novak looking forward to being here, chasing his 8th title, etc., etc., etc. All right, but before we get into the race for Turin, I do want to address, of course, what occurred itself in Paris last week. And that, of course, was that Jannik Sinner became the champion of Paris Bercy for the first time. In fact, I'm calling it Paris Bercy. It is not Paris Bercy. It is, of course, the Paris Masters. I'm still calling it that. Let's have a quick look at the moment that Jannik sealed the title.
Cross court. Sinner goes.
Oh, wow. What a win. Hands up. Hands up.
Now,
hands up. No tears.
He does raise both hands in the air. It is a
Didn't fall to the ground. Didn't fall to the ground.
It is
handshake.
The first Paris
and then he does a hug. Oh my God, I got every single part right.
He did. It's the first Paris title for Jannik. It's a fifth title of the year.
Yep. Ghosty says that was my Italian accent. No, that was my Italian-German accent. It's sort of like when you speak French in Russian. If you know, you know.
Okay. So it's a first Paris title, and it's what is it? I'm gonna guess it's Masters title number.
Oh, and the producer points out this has huge tectonic rankings implications. Sinner is now the world number one. Is that correct?
Yeah.
World number one indeed. Jannik Sinner sealing the title in straight sets, 6-4, 7-6 yesterday afternoon. And it was a fairly dominant performance both yesterday but also throughout the tournament from Jannik. Of course, I'm going to share as well with you on the screen his run to the final. Of course, there was a 6-love, 6-1 set against Alexander Zverev in the semi-finals. Zverev, of course, struggling with an injury. Will be interesting to see if he can recover in time, because I think it was quite serious the way he was hobbling around. But hats off to Alexander for finishing that match, because it would have been very easy for him to retire. But yes, not dropping a set. And in the final, 6-4, 7-6 to save Felix, it was tight, that second set, when they were both holding serve continuously. Felix serving as only Felix can. It was competitive, and we thought we might be able to get a third set, but ultimately Jannik getting over the line. But of course, the big twist in the tournament was Carlos losing in his first match to Cam Norrie. And then once that happened, as is so often the case on the ATP Tour, it did get a little bit boring because we knew that Jannik was heading for both the final, but probably the title as well. In fact, I'd love to know in the live chat, do you think that ATP Tour is getting too predictable for its own good? Now, of course, you're going to say to me, John, Vachereau, outside the top 200, just won a Masters 1000. Yes, a Masters 1000 that Carlos Alcaraz didn't compete at and Jannik Sinner retired hurt at. So perhaps there is a little clue in there suggesting that basically a tournament without Jannik and Carlos is fireworks. A tournament with Jannik or Carlos, but Jannik in particular, is anything but. And yeah, I've had many conversations with people suggesting that we do need a third or even a fourth wheel on the ATP Tour to make it fun. I know that we look back on the Big Three era with fondness, but even then, was there a little bit more unpredictability with those three, with the exception of maybe 2019 Wimbledon, when of course they all strolled into the semi-finals. You had your moments with Nishikori, for example. You had your moments with Marin Cilic and so on and so forth, and Davydenko, of course, earlier on. And I think we desperately need a third person. I personally think the third player could be Ben Shelton. That would be my call. You might see that result against Jannik, for example, in the quarterfinal 6-3, 6-3, and go, that doesn't bode well for Ben. Well, I do think that Ben can perform better, and he is recovering right now. Of course, he's just returning to the tour, having got injured at the US Open. So I think we can give him a little bit of leeway. But it'll be interesting to see how Ben competes as well at the ATP Tour Finals. I think Ben would be looking to at least emerge from the group and then see where he is. I think Ben would probably rather be in a group with Carlos Alcaraz than Jannik Sinner, but that is still to come. We'll have the live draw, by the way, coming up later on this week. But yeah, let me know in the comments below or in the live chat, is the ATP Tour getting boring now in the absence of anyone to threaten Jannik Sinner, but also Carlos Alcaraz? Yeah, a very tough run, you would normally say, for Jannik Sinner. I mean, this is the beauty, of course, of the Masters 1000s, smaller draw 1 week, but having to skittle over in the round of 16, Francisco Cerundolo, followed by Ben Shelton in the quarters, Alexander Zverev, albeit a hampered one in the semis, and Felix Auger-Aliassime, who I think will be desperate to make the finals in Turin because I think he can make an impression there. I think Felix is another one. Other than Jannik Sinner, I don't think there's anyone guaranteed to emerge from the group. So I think if you're going to go into the ATP Tour Finals and you have qualified, and we'll come to the ramifications of Felix and Musetti shortly, you're going to be thinking, I need to be in a group that doesn't contain Jannik Sinner. Then there are 2 spots available. If you're in a group with Jannik Sinner, then there's 1 spot available, if that makes sense. Of course, Jannik, with this title win, by the way, returns to the world number 1. And in fact, the world's number 1,000 is closer to number 3 than number 3 is to number 2. That is a wild statistic. If we look at this, the gap between Alcaraz and Zverev is 5,690 points. The gap between Zverev and the world number 1,000, the Dutchman Kulubli, is 5,536 points. Which, as I said, is just wild. Also, anyway, back to number 1. Regarding the ramifications for next week, just looking at next week, Sinner loses number 1. Fritz leaves the top 5 and Ruud leaves the top 10. So that's for next. That's before the 2024 points drop next weekend. Of course, that's the end of year finals. But I actually do have some stuff on this regarding Carlos and Alcaraz and the ramifications. I'm going to look for them now. Yeah. So if Sinner wins all 5 matches in Turin, pay up attention at the back. Alcaraz is number 1 if, so this is if Sinner wins all 5 matches. So not just wins the title, but wins all 3 group stage matches. Alcaraz can still be year-end number 1 if he wins 3 round-robin matches or 2 round-robin matches and a semi-final or 1 round-robin match and also reaches the final. So, because you can actually technically win the tournament by winning just one round robin match and losing two if one person runs away with the group. If Sinner wins Turin with one loss, Alcaraz is year-end number one if he wins two matches in Turin. If Sinner wins Turin with two losses, Alcaraz is year-end number one if he wins one match in Turin. It kind of feels like it's very much in Alcaraz's hands, but with Sinner, for me, being the hot favorite in Turin, Alcaraz will need to at least make the semi-finals to guarantee the world number one spot. That is how the ramifications appear to pan out. Rudis said as well on this caption we can see on the screen for those of you listening to the podcast, Casper Ruud is set to leave the top 10 next week. And Fritz is set to leave the top 5. I guess that's because they did well in 250s last year. We will, of course, have Athens coming up this week with Novak Djokovic returning. And we still don't know if he's playing in Turin. So we've got some sort of not quite breaking news. I think it broke last night. But Felix Auger-Aliassime has withdrawn, okay, which I think for many will be a bit of a surprise. But yeah, he has withdrawn from the 250, which I think he was going to play in Metz, wasn't he? Along with Musetti. Yeah. So, yeah, I think Musetti still needs to make the final. I think. So that's the scenario. Maybe Felix either has had a phone call from Novak Djokovic saying, don't worry, I'm not participating in the ATP Tour final. So it's all free for you and Musetti to play. Or Felix thinks that Musetti's form is so bad that he's not going to make the final in Metz, and that may well be the case. Or he's just really duffed up, as in physically struggling and needs to have a few days off if he wants to perform well in Turin. Remember, the draw for that will be coming up on Thursday, so do tune in for that on live on Talking Tennis. But also, do join us for a watch-along for Iga Swiatek against Elena Rybakina. We'll be having that live on the channel in just over half an hour. So yeah, that's the situation regarding Turin. But Felix, I think, can take some heart from both his performances during this indoor court season, but especially in Paris. I think the 7 players, I think, let's have a quick look at the 8 players, including Djokovic, or 7 players that have already qualified. So obviously we've got Carlos Alcaraz leading the race, but not world number one. We've got Novak Djokovic and Ben Shelton. They've all secured their places. Ben Shelton, Taylor Fritz and Alex de Minaur were all assured this week after their performances in Paris. That qualified them. And then it's just a straight shootout now between Felix Auger-Aliassime and Lorenzo Musetti. So what I was about to say is when it comes to Turin, I think that there's one person in the semifinals already. And then I would say everyone bar Lorenzo, if he qualifies, would be in with a shout of making the semis. I don't think that Carlos is by any way a stretch of the imagination secure. Bearing in mind his performances in the ATP Finals before, where Carlos has never made the final. Bearing in mind his performance against Cam Norrie in Paris-Bercy, where he's only won a handful of matches in his career so far anyway. Yes, he won Rotterdam in February, but that's in February, different conditions, different situation, different freshness, etc., etc. I do think we might be looking at a Carlos Alcaraz record indoors, not too dissimilar to that of Rafa Nadal's, but I do expect Carlos to pick up a few more titles. And I do think Carlos will win the ATP Finals at least once in his career, unlike Rafa. Whereas this year, though, I'm not sure. But yeah, as you can see on the screen there, Novak Djokovic is going to be playing Athens this week. But we are waiting basically with bated breath as to whether he will play in the ATP Finals. And I think that news will drop. We're just waiting for it. Unless we suddenly start to see images probably by Wednesday. It may even drop at some point today. But I would imagine that if he's playing, we just hear nothing. If he's pulling out, you'd think maybe after his match in Athens today, he'll be sure either way of that. But yeah, we'll see. Actually, is he playing today or is he playing tomorrow? He's playing tomorrow against Alejandro Tobillo. which I think is not a gimme for Novak. So, yeah, but I'm sure he'll be keen to. That's the round of 16. So, he's only got 4 wins to get the title there. And that would be title number 101 after winning in Geneva this year. So, yes, that is the points roundup. That is the race to Turin roundup. And that is the reflection on the final, where it was a very serve-dominated affair in Paris between Jannik Sinner and Felix Auger-Aliassime. But it was Jannik who got the job done with that one break at serve advantage in the first set, and then the second set tiebreak. Just both players were very solid. I think Felix, by the way, can take a lot of heart from both that performance yesterday, especially if he was struggling with something physical, but also their match in the semi-finals at the US Open, which could easily have gone 5 sets. Okay, looking back on the semi-finals in Turin, of course, we did have Jannik Sinner against Alexander Zverev. Zverev's tournament, by the way, included finally a win over Daniil Medvedev. At last for Alexander, having lost the previous 5 encounters. But boy, oh boy, it was anything but a short. He was down a set and a break, and yet managed to come back, ultimately winning it on a tiebreak in the third set. He did have a break advantage that he ceded in that match. But I thought, actually going into the match, that Zverev would finally turn the corner, partly because I thought he played so well against Davidovich Fokina in the previous round, partly because indoor, slower conditions, I think, are probably a little bit more favorable for Zverev than they are for Medvedev. I think in Turin, if they play again, we might well be seeing, well, they won't play again because Medvedev hasn't qualified. But if they had played in much quicker conditions, I might well have, if I would have sided with Medvedev. Such was the fineness of the margin. But at least he's got that monkey off his back. If he's fit for the ATP Tour Finals, he will have a chance. If the injury that he appeared to have in that semi-final with Sinner had a huge impact on the result. And I thought it was going to be competitive before they played. So, yeah, that would suggest that there was an issue there, and that actually if he'd been fully fit, we might well see a very different match. And of course, they did play each other in the Vienna final recently, which was so close, finishing 7-5 in the third set. So maybe that can be something for Alexander. Because I think, in a way, in Turin, everybody's trying to reach the final, right? Everyone, maybe not so much Lorenzo Musetti if he qualifies, but everyone's looking at a possible final appearance against Jannik Sinner, including Carlos Alcaraz. And then it's just a case of whether, they can pull it out on the day, as Alexander Zverev so nearly did in Vienna recently, as Felix, showed signs of maybe pushing it to a third set in Paris-Bercy, or even that US Open semi-final. Everybody else, everyone else will fancy their chances against Carlos. Felix will fancy his chances against Carlos for sure. If Cam Norrie can beat Carlos Alcaraz, any of the other 7 best players in the world this year can also beat Carlos Alcaraz. Do make sure you hit that like button. Of course, if you are new to the channel, hit subscribe. Wonderful to see so many of you tuning in on Instagram as well. Do get in the comments on Instagram, and I will try and react to those. The other losing semi-finalist, of course, was Alexander Bublik, who, by the way, is going to be playing a 250 this week, despite not making the ATP Tour Finals. He's going to be playing in Metz in the round of 16 against an opponent yet to be decided. Bublik was in the race until his loss to Felix, but he was up 4-1 in that second set. So that's a bit of a surprise in how that came about. And the thing is, with Felix, you cannot afford to lose a break advantage, given how much pop he gets on his serve indoors. And that proved to be the case. Once that lead had gone, it proved to be the turning point. In fact, from 4-1, he loses 5 games in a row, gets broken twice, and Felix wins the match 7-6, 6-4. But even if he had won Paris-Bercy, and I think it would have taken a real stretch for him to have beaten Jannik Sinner in the final, even then I think he would have had to have probably won a 250 this week and also hope other results went his way. So, yeah, he'd be very much in the race had he won the tournament, but if he'd made the final, I think he might still have had a chance. But losing that semi-final when he was out. But it's still been an excellent year for Alexander Bublik. 4 titles, of course, for him. And he's at a career high right now, I think, in the rankings of I'm going to say 13 in the world rankings, but I think it's a career high for Bublik. Actually, he's at number 11, sorry. And he will be, of course, a second alternate for Turin. He will be a second alternate for Turin, looking at this situation here. And of course, if Musetti or Auger-Aliassime don't make it, they will be the first alternate. Because Draper, by the way, obviously he's injured and so can't make it. So whatever happens, I think Bublik will at least be the second alternate. If Djokovic does withdraw, he'll be the first alternate. And for those of you not knowing what alternate means, it just means you go to Turin and you're ready and waiting should one of the other players unfortunately get injured, and then you can step into the breach. Normally, that ends up being the second or the third match. So by which time you're in as an alternate, but you don't have any chance of qualifying. But, of course, if you make it in for the second match, you could win 2 matches and qualify. But I don't recall an alternate ever winning the ATP Tour Finals. But maybe I'm wrong. Get in the comments below if that is the case. Okay. So, Bublik, tick. Any other stories? Well, I guess the other big story in Paris last week was the loss for Carlos Alcaraz against Cam Norrie. He was up at winning the first set, and I thought, okay, that's that done. Well done, Cam. You've turned up, nicely done. But Alcaraz ended up, from that moment onwards, threw in a stinker. An absolute stinker from that moment onwards. And Carlos Alcaraz was getting very angry. Remember all the comments that he was making pre-match about how happy he was with the slow conditions? Very happy he was with the slow conditions. And I get that. I thought that might give him, might help him as well. But ultimately, he was lamenting those slow conditions in a big way, wasn't he? When he was saying to his team, this is slower than Monte Carlo, I think, was his words to his team. Midway through the match, as error after error was coming off the racket and Cam Norrie was enjoying the event. Had a few little struggles to get over the line, Cam, in terms of the fact that once he went up a break in that third set, he did have to fend off a couple of break points in one game. But some loose returns from Carlos and some loose shots all round, helping Cam seal the deal. Okay, ATP Tour Finals, tick. Novak Djokovic, etc., tick. And also Paris-Bercy, tick. Let me just see if I have anything else on the agenda before we look forward to Athens and Metz. Nope. Let's get forward. Let's go and look at the Metz draw. Let's get it up for you on the screen as well. And for those of you listening to the podcast, then just pay attention, basically. Okay, so, of course, Felix Auger-Aliassime gets a bye, and he'll be playing the winner of Jacquet, a lucky loser, and Van Asch. That doesn't sound... Oh, Felix, of course, is withdrawn. So I don't know why I'm saying that to you. I'm going to view the full draw, actually, here, and let's share it with you. So Felix has withdrawn, so ignore his spot in the draw. But we have got Kaboli, Bublik in action in Metz. And I think Bublik will be thinking, I can win this title and win my 5th title of the year. And if he does win his 5th title of the year, he'll break into the top 10, which I think has to be probably his big motivation for playing this tournament. Greek sport, though, for Bublik in the quarterfinal potentially would be a tough one. Should that happen, Kriegspor's going to be playing Kovacevic in the first round. Then he would play either a lucky loser or blocks in the next round before potentially playing Bublik in the quarters. So, yeah, but with Felix pulling out, for me, it's Bublik or bust. Cam Norrie maybe after that win, and Felix would draw. Cam Norrie's in the opposite side of the draw. Yeah, he could make the final. Could do. But there's plenty of others in there. Lorenzo Sonego, Manorino, Cazot that will have something to say about that in that half of the draw. As for Athens, of course, the big story in Athens is the appearance of Novak Djokovic. We will have a quick look at that draw before bringing this show to a close. He, by the way, is going to be playing, Tabilo beating Walton in the first round. So in the round of 16, Novak Djokovic will be coming up against Tabilo. And then the winner of that will be playing probably Nuno Borges, who's the number 6 seed in the quarterfinals. I think it might even get a bit easier for Novak after that, because probably after that, you'd be looking at maybe Marujan or Nakashima in the quarterfinals. And in the semi-final, actually Nakashima or Marujan might even be a semi-final. So yeah, Djokovic will be looking at a run which would be Tabilo, Borges, Marujan, or Nakashima. And then in the final, Darderi, Musetti. Of course, Musetti's on this chase for Turin, so he'll be super, super motivated to at least get to the final. But then if Musetti's in the final, he's then qualified. What kind of a level we're going to see from him in that final? He's not going to withdraw on the eve of a final. I think if it's a semi-final, maybe. But as he needs to get to the final, I think it's the final he needs, doesn't he? Let me just go back to the Jose Morgado tweet. Yeah, I think Musetti needs the final with the absence of Felix playing next week. It would have been that he needed to win if Felix had got to the semis in Metz, but now it's just because Felix is not playing. He just needs to make the final. And yeah, his form isn't great, but I'd say he's got a decent chance. All right. Well, a shorter version of ATP Weekly this week. So apologies for those of you that were excited to listen to 1.5 hours of members of the team chatting away. But on this occasion, we have a shorter version. But as a bonus, as a compensation, we will be bringing you live coverage of Iga Swiatek against Elena Rybakina, which will be coming up shortly at the WTA Finals. But in the meantime, you know the drill. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.